Well, good morning, John and Randy. My name is Ed Dedic. I'm the Vice President of Solution Sales for PowerSchool, and I want to welcome Randy and John to having a little chat here. Maybe we could have you guys introduce yourselves. So, John, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, my name is John Severson. I'm Superintendent at Muskegon Area ISD. I am in my 6th year. Prior to that, had 10 years as a superintendent for a local K-12, and then have been in a number of other locations and positions to get to this job today.
Great, thanks. Randy.
My name is Randy Lindquist. I'm the Associate Superintendent for Academic Services at Muskegon ISD. This is my 13th year there, and prior to this, I was an elementary school principal and an elementary teacher.
Great, great. So we just want to have a conversation about, what you guys have been doing. I've been watching the news and just watching what's happening in Muskegon ISD, and I think you guys are just a fantastic leader in helping, make sure that students are safe and that they're learning and as best they possibly can in this time. And so the question I have is, as schools begin to close and move to distance learning, what was Muskegon's ISD's first step in supporting students, their families, and teachers?
Focus first and foremost was wellness of our students and families. We wanted to make sure that they were safe, they were doing well social and emotionally, and we had some connections and relationships with them first and foremost before we started on the academic path.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the big piece was we had to recognize that we were entering a pandemic. It wasn't just, like a snow day. This was very serious. And that in the back of our minds, we had to look at where every family might be, where their reality may be, meaning could they be impacted by COVID directly? Do they have connectivity? Did father get laid off? I mean, there's a lot of these social hardships that we really could see through that lens right away, and we didn't want to do any harm. I would say one of the first things we really went after was making sure students that have difficulty getting food, that we could take care of that need. And we were very quick to focus on that lens of wellness, but recognizing this is a pandemic. And it's not just like we're putting distance learning together. We have to recognize all of those other pieces. And I think that urgency gave us a very good start of why it was so important to address this problem differently than maybe some of the other ones that we've dealt with over time.
And I would add that it was drastic change that happened very quickly too, which also made it important that we focused on that wellness piece and those relationships, because we had to make a plan in less than 2 weeks what it would look like to learn from home and work remotely. So it happened very quickly, and that was really important to make sure that connection and relationship piece was there first and foremost.
Yeah,
that's great. Well, I know we see that in the community, so that's been fantastic.
I think the big piece of that too is we had to give teachers and staff and consultants permission to take risks right away. And Randy and I think did a really good job starting with that conversation. We have a lot of people that are very research-based, work really, really hard to want to do the right things, make sure that they're looking at the problem, very uniquely. But I think in a case like this, you didn't have time to research a problem for months on end. And one of the things I remember saying to folks was, you've been in this business, some of you, for many, many years. You've had years of training. You've been to hundreds of meetings and PD, and now you just need to look through the lens of the kids you're serving. And that's a really, I think, a very important way to approach a major problem is take that pressure off of maybe making some mistakes. I think if people are given that right off the beginning, they feel that we trust them to do the very best that they can. And that trust and that relationship is such a glue going into any major issue or problem. I think it's the foundation of everything we do is relationships and trust. And if those things are not there, then people are always looking at the back of, oh, I'm being evaluated, and if I fail, how will that be? And they get so mired in the details that the ship has already left the port, you know. And I think Randy and his team and the things that I said initially helped as a start of that. We know it's an urgency, but don't get caught up on, I got to read a million things. You've got this, basically. You know, you've been through a million things. So that helps people kind of in their start, you know, to kickstart it off.
Yeah. So John, you know, carrying on with that, what was Muskegon's ISD's key to success in being able to pivot very quickly? Both you and Randy have discussed just the rapid nature of this. So how were you able, what was the key to that success?
I think, to me, it stems back how we've been kicking off our years with all our staff. And this last year, we had a phrase that said, ask why, be bold, and innovate. And the ask why was recognizing that there's a sense of urgency that the work we do many times can save lives. And this was a specific case of that asking why. And we referenced that being bold is being unafraid and pushing your assumptions aside. And we all have, you know, assumptions, and how do you not get caught into those mental frames that maybe slow you down? And then to innovate is bringing all the pieces and people together. And so we work really hard to focus on building that culture. So to give you an example, right before the pandemic broke out, we had a survey of our staff, and we decided as a cabinet, let's see how we're doing. Let's see how people feel about our organization. And one of the resulting questions was in the mid-90% that people felt they had a purpose. And we've been so focused on recognizing that you have a purpose, recognizing that you, no matter your role, have a part in this organization. And I think that alone really showed that people understood their value. And knowing that when this problem came along, the foundation was there. The foundation was whole. Yep. And things could just go forward very quickly. As an example, the state gave us some guidance on some preschool program, and it came a little later, and we knew we didn't have, 2, 3, 4 weeks to do this. We had to do it as quickly as possible, or we'd lose students, we'd lose their attention, and we'd lose teachers. Yep. And I think that was a big base of that. So, Randy, what's your thoughts on how nimble our staff was? You got to see a lot of things firsthand. What do you think?
I think that the fact that they had strong relationships already pre-existing with our local districts and the staff there was critical to the success. We have a very strong collaborative spirit in Muskegon County amongst our schools and our organization, and that's critical in making this happen very quickly. There wasn't someone looking to do something on their own in isolation, but they were looking to feed off of each other and use each other for resources to make it happen very quickly. So that collaborative spirit, I think, is very, very important in our county and how we were able to react to this situation.
That's great. That's great.
I think one more thing, Ed, is we really leaned into wellness of our staff as well. And we have a weekly survey that if they have questions or concerns, to ask those in a weekly survey. We have a really nice newsletter that goes out every week. and we're trying to make that as much two-way as possible. And then we just put in a employment, health program that we're looking that if anybody needs any kind of counseling, we just put that in place. We had been studying it, but the timing really fit well to go forward with that. But we've been really trying to strive for where we can get input, or where people feel open to asking those questions. But I think our staff wellness, we've talked a lot about their resiliency and how we're connected. And I know, like Randy and a lot of my team, personal cards. We have 400 staff. I send a birthday card to every staff member. I try to make as much, making that as personal as possible. Now that I'm home, I'm doing it from home, but I'm adding more to it because it's email, and I like those things that are old school, like a personal hardcover card, But I think we had the foundation of trust, but just asking, how are you doing and what are you doing? And part of the feedback is people are telling us what they're doing, and we're including it, like people saying they're doing yoga, they're doing walks, so we're getting their voice in this conversation. And I think that's really been important foundationally.
And Ed, I would add to that everything we do, we've been trying to model what we preach in terms of that wellness piece. So those check-ins with staff, we also model that in trainings we do. So we check in with the audience beforehand, and we model that, and then we talk about what we just did, so they can then replicate that with their own staff or students when they're doing work in their districts. So I think being able to model those things for our local districts is important also.
That's awesome. So, we know that Muskegon ISD and the schools use at the basic level PowerSchool SIS, Student Information System, and special education. And many of the local schools use even more PowerSchool products. But how has PowerSchool Student Information System and the special ed system helped you through this process? Have you as you've gone through that?
I want to share something before you get to that with PowerSchool. Sure. Something we did right before this happened. We ran a lot of very specific detail on grades and students because a lot of times we run attendance, and we know that grades impact attendance too. When students start to do poorly, sometimes they can check out. So we did individual plans, and we went really deep. We looked at through subgroups, whether it was pulling out special ed, male, female. We ran special program lines and reports to see, what specific courses students are not doing poorly and what time of the day people are doing poorly. But trying to dig deeper into the data, because sometimes look at an assumption, or we're so used to a practice that we haven't looked at maybe another piece of data. So my analogy is, if you were taking a college course and you weren't doing well, you would just not show up. You'd either drop it, and if you couldn't drop it and you're not going to pass it, you're not going to show up. And it's the same for kids, so the truancy can be many times connected to that, but also it can be connected to mental health. So we try to get more to the root of what's going on with those students that are not coming. We found kids that have high anxiety. We found kids that they're missing the first couple hours of the day because they're taking care of a sibling while that parent is sleeping from a late shift. Digging a little deeper sometimes will tell us a better story than kids not just being connected. But we also found maybe kids are disconnected to courses. What PowerSchool was able to do for those reports was a little different than some schools are using. Now, I know PowerSchool has those reports, but sometimes people have to see the rationale of why I use a report and what came out of that. And I know with one of the districts, they went back and they had much tougher conversations with their administrators. Hey, we know this course is really difficult. Let's get in that room. Let's see what's going on with the students. Let's see what's going on with the teacher. Is it the instruction? Do we need to get an instructional coach in here? Are we dealing with behavior? What's going on? I think the data pulled out of those reports caused some conversation that might not have been taking place. As an ISD, when we brought that to the table, we weren't trying to catch people doing bad, because I had done this myself as a K-12 student. And I told them I had assumptions till I looked in the data. The thing we have to do always in education is keep asking why, and then take away an assumption, which is really, really hard not to do. And the reason I go there is, as a state, we have the same graduation rates, and we work so hard on testing. But I would say, if a student can't pass 9th grade math, how are they going to do on an SAT down the road? So focus on that, and then focus on the reasons why. And then you take the data from a PowerSchool, and don't look at just your basic reports. Go deeper into new kinds of reporting, and then learn from each other. So here's one thing, Ed, I found. Two superintendents said, we were trying to run these reports. I said, here are all the reports we can run now, and we can give them, and you don't have to spend your time learning how to design a report. We could show you the reports we can do and how they can be used. Now we have a why to use a report, which is different than I just collect data.
That's great.
I would add just that PowerSchool is a central and key component of how our districts operate, and that data is really critical, even down to demographic data. So how you connect with students, parents, families. And PowerSchool also connects with a lot of other third-party products that districts use, and making sure that data is complete and transferring properly is really, really important. So something as simple as sending out communications in this pandemic rely on a third-party product that PowerSchool feeds with the correct phone numbers, emails, etc. So it really plays a pivotal role in making sure that we can connect and communicate with our students and families across the county.
Well, listen, guys, any last thoughts, things that you're working on?
I would just add that if we started with a story of the pandemic, one of the things that we looked at was food insecurity, and we brought the superintendents in as a county. We had 3 major different entities running the food service in the county. So it wasn't the same, program or same company. And we all worked together through the lens of what happens if a district loses their kitchen because of COVID and people are sick. We're seeing that nationally now with some of the major markets. It took away the competition because they knew we were stronger together. I know it's cliche, but it's true. And so every Wednesday we worked. And we came up with a new system. People got very creative. We're hearing that some districts' food increase was almost 20% higher after doing this. And just this week, I went to a countywide review of our emergency processes, and a lot of our food pantries are back to where they were before the pandemic. Meaning, they were so overwhelmed, and now they're back to that. And I think it's attributed to, we took one group collectively out of the concern. And through that, Michigan received one of the first EBT pandemic cards. We were able to leverage how we work together, designed a very easy graphic communicate that now is being used across the state. And I think a lot of these things only happened because people didn't do that in isolation. We could have said, we're okay in our district, the food's going well. We were like, we can do better. And so a lot of the districts, it's 1 day a week instead of, at first, I think it started 3 days a week. So we've lessened also the increase or potential of more human contact just by having this 1 time a week, right? And we're packaging things in bulk, so not as much waste. And we're giving 7 breakfasts and 7 lunches, and a couple of districts now we're able to add dinner. So when you think of 1 million meals in such a very short time for a county that has like 26,000 kids, that's, wow. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I attribute that to the collaborative and the local superintendents all coming together and just saying, get it done. we can do this. And the politics and everything just washed away. So Randy, you have anything to add on to that? Because I think that if we wouldn't have done that, we would have served a lot of food. I don't think it'd been the number.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll add to the food part, but I will just say the next phase. We're in a good spot now, and we're getting through the spring. But the next phase now is, what does fall look like? And we even have a lot of summer programming there's questions about. So really, it's now time to start planning and thinking about next school year and what that looks like and how we operate. Because I think we all believe it's going to look different than it has in the past. And so, what do we do to maintain quality programming for kids, but also maintaining a safe environment for them? So that's where the next phase is looking at the fall and how we operate next year.
And I just
we're looking forward to seeing what you're doing. So
yeah, I just add to that too. We don't want to have meetings for meetings and people replicating. So we're trying to leverage. We have people that are already connected to some of the state planning, and then we're trying to get the voice of those leaders, but we can't lose the voice of what the teachers and the parents are seeing, because we could design something that looks like, you know, the nicest Lexus, but it doesn't have a motor in it. You know, I think you have to be really careful with getting, because we can make that assumption again that this is going to work. And we haven't even analyzed what we got now. We're just starting to do that. What is working well? And I think because of Randy and our team, we're asking those questions. We're listening a lot about what is really going on. So it's not a top-down mandate approach, you know. And unfortunately, Ed, I don't know if we're really going to get as much guidance as we think. And that's the scary part. This is a national conversation. It's a world conversation right now with education.
Well, it just shows that the leadership that you've taken in Muskegon County and what you're going to be able to help others with through this video series and just what I've seen you do publicly, it's all led by example, and we're really proud to be a part of that for you at PowerSchool. And we just encourage you to keep up the great work.